In the foothills of the Himalayas, men partake in a death-defying hunt for one of the rarest substances on Earth, Himalayan Mad Honey. It's created by the world's largest honeybee, Apis labriosa, an incredibly aggressive species that builds its hives on cliffs hundreds of feet above the ground. But for centuries, members of Nepal's indigenous Gurung people have made a deadly descent down the cliffs on bamboo ladders. Because as you'll see later, this mad honey has special powers, and I'll be trying it myself. The honey has become highly sought after worldwide, and a single jar can cost hundreds of dollars. This luxury item is still obtained by the few remaining honey hunters, and today I'm going to follow them on their journey. Will this wild hunt end in success or tragedy? And why do the Gurung people continue to risk their lives for the liquid gold? Every year, there are week-long windows in spring and fall where the bees have produced enough honey to make the harvest worthwhile. As these dates approach, for Gurung villages throughout the region, the hunt is on. They erupt into 3 to 4 days of preparation, and tradition dictates that at least one member of every family gets involved. They start by cutting bamboo down to thin fibers that are used to weave ropes, baskets, and strong ladders for the hunters. After days of hard work, the village sacrifices an animal to appease their gods, and the hunting party gathers up the equipment and sets off for the cliffs on foot, knowing that they could be marching to their deaths. The most potent mad honey is found at higher altitudes, so the hives the Gurung are searching for are found all the way up here. No, not there. Up there. The best honey is the deadliest to reach, but after walking for several hours, the party finally arrives at their destination, a series of giant hives towering above them, surrounded by a swarm of deadly bees. To start, 5 men find a route up the mountain to get to the top of the cliff, while the rest stay at the bottom and build a huge bonfire under the hives. See, bees communicate with scent-based pheromones that allow them to warn the entire hive when they detect a threat. At this point, the colony can swarm together and attack the intruder en masse. And when you're facing bees that are twice the size of the ones in your backyard, this could be deadly. But smoke blocks these pheromones, preventing the bees from communicating while also triggering a panic response that makes them gorge themselves with honey. When you get stressed and eat too much Chinese takeout, you probably feel sleepy and sick, and the honey does the same thing, making the giant bees more passive and drowsy as the hunters prepare their approach. Once the smoke has reached the hives, the team at the bottom let off a series of whistles to let the hunters know it's time to make their descent. The final step, a prayer to their gods to ensure that the party is protected during their hunt, and another to the bees to ask for their forgiveness for destroying the hives. It's go time, and 2 hunters start climbing down the ladder with bare feet to improve their grip on the bamboo. They perform a traditional Gurung chant to boost morale, and as the lower hunter fights through the bees to get into position, the other hands them a long stick of bamboo with a bladed tip called a tango. The wind picks up and things get shaky. So you're probably wondering, what makes this honey so mad that they do all this to harvest it? But we'll get to that in a moment. The hunter starts using the tango to cut giant slices of honeycomb out of the hive. But at this point, if the comb falls to the ground, it'll be obliterated. So the hunter catches it with a basket called a tokari that's hooked onto another stick of bamboo and positioned under the hive. Some villages only have one hunter, and in these cases, he has to hold the tokari with his toes while he knocks the honeycomb loose. He's now connected to the ladder with 1 foot, hundreds of feet above the rocks below. But the hunter soldiers on, and once the tokari is full, it's reeled back in by the group at the top of the cliff, before being emptied and lowered back down to repeat the process. The height of the Apis labriosa hives can differ greatly, and in some cases, the smoke from the bonfire isn't enough to calm the majority of the bees. This hive is too high, and the unsmoked bees have started to gather around it like one humming organism. If they sense the hunter's presence, the consequences could be fatal. So the hunter is given a burning bundle of leaves that will allow him to smoke them out more directly. As you can imagine, handling fire on a bamboo ladder is risky, and one miscalculation could cause the hunter's equipment to go up in flames. Then the unsmoked bees sense him, launching an attack and sending their pheromones back to the hive for reinforcements. He's in serious trouble, but the wall of smoke arrives just in time, pacifying the bees before they can swarm together. He can now cut at the hive without being overwhelmed. But despite the smoke, the hunters are still stung repeatedly, as some of the bees target their unprotected feet, and their giant stingers pass through their protective clothing. Fortunately, after years on the job, the honey hunters have grown accustomed to the pain.
I used to swat the bees away in my initial days. Now my body has adapted to the bee bites. They do not scare me anymore.
In fact, while they now perform the hunt in modern beekeeping masks, they used to wear traditional clothing that offered almost no protection. Still, bee stings are the least of their worries, and there are a number of things that could cause a hunter to fall from their ladder. In the Gurung village of Talochipla, one elder called Yaucho Gurung recounted a tragic incident. The bonfire at the bottom of the cliff was so big that it set the hunter's ladder on fire, causing the bamboo to erupt into flames. The hunter was stranded on the cliff with flames creeping up toward his unprotected feet, so he had no choice but to let go, sending his body crashing to the rocks below. Many of the Gurung villages have faced tragedy like this, and burning, falling, or succumbing to stings is always on the honey hunters' minds. But why do they continue to risk their lives, and what makes this honey so valuable? Well, it's created with nectar from high-altitude rhododendron flowers that contain the naturally occurring neurotoxin, gyanotoxin. The plant makes this chemical for the same reason coffee contains caffeine. It's the plant's defense against insects, a natural pesticide. But these bees have evolved to resist the toxin, and as Nepal's national flower, the rhododendrons are abundant in the Himalayas during spring. So the giant honeybees collect their nectar and take it back to their hive before adding digestive enzymes to turn it into honey. The gyanotoxins remain throughout this process, resulting in a honey that's poisonous and can be used as a narcotic or traditional medicine. Just 4 to 5 drops can cause euphoria, deep relaxation, and hallucinations. And you'll see how it affected me in a moment. But honeybees are dying out across Nepal, and as honey supplies dwindle, these men might become the last of the Himalayan honey hunters. Before we see why the hunt is dying, one of our hunters is in trouble. After filling up several tokaris with honey, he's exhausted, and his grip on the ladder is starting to slip. Some of the honey misses the tokari and crashes into the rocks, reducing the size of their precious harvest. The hunter knows that he can't go on much longer, and if he continues, he could share a similar fate. But the entire village is relying on him, so he carries on, knowing he's moments away from a fatal accident. Finally, the final piece of honeycomb is cut free, and as the tokari is raised, the hunter is able to shakily start his climb back up the ladder. He's fatigued, covered in stings, and wheezing from smoke inhalation, but the hunt is a success, and the party all sing and dance with excitement, as some of them start chowing down on the honey straight away. Then it's back to work. The hunter removes up to 40 stingers from his skin, while others gather up the gigantic chunks of harvested honeycomb and place them into a woven filter called a chora. Here, the honeycomb is strained, filtering out dirt and dead bees to allow pure mad honey to trickle into a container. The job is slow and laborious, but once it's complete, they have a bucket full of potent mad honey, and the party can start the long walk back to the village with their haul. On the way back, a hunter called Nanda Lal Tamang tasted the honey in celebration, while explaining that their yield totaled 5 liters. A single jar of the stuff goes for around $200, so that probably sounds like a lot. But in 2017, Gurung villages could expect to reap over 40 gallons of mad honey every year, and a single hunt could yield around 75 liters. The Gurung say that this drop is due to climate change, as rising temperatures are causing the rhododendrons to bloom later in the year, preventing the bees from producing as much honey. Furthermore, the use of pesticides, pollution, and the development of infrastructure like dams is causing bees to die out across Nepal. And now there's a 70% decrease in the country's honeybee population every year. Around the village of Upper Chipla, there are now just 10 to 12 spots that the Gurung can rely on for honey production. And as we'll see, they've had to come up with some new creative methods of making money. But this wasn't always the case, and the honey used to be so abundant that anybody could find a hive and gather it themselves. Back in the 1st century BCE, it was even used as a biological weapon during the Third Mithratic War. The Kingdom of Pontus were battling the Roman Republic in the Black Sea region of modern Turkey, the only other place where mad honey is found. Back then, there were mad honey hives all over the mountains, and King Mithridates ordered his men to gather the honeycomb and leave it along the sides of mountain roads. When the Roman army passed through the area, the soldiers would grab the free honey and eat it, causing thousands of their men to be poisoned with cyanotoxins as Mithridates' army swept in with an ambush. For thousands of years, the honey was just as abundant in the Himalayas, so the yield this year was pretty disappointing. But regardless of the haul's size, when the hunters return to their village, half of the honey is split evenly amongst the villagers. It isn't just used as a recreational drug, and the Gurung people believe that mad honey is a powerful medicine with pain-relieving, anti-inflammatory, and energy-boosting properties. So villagers of all ages are given a dose, and the men also take it due to a belief that it works as an aphrodisiac. Still, it isn't all business, and after the hunt, the Gurung have cause to celebrate. So some of the honey is mixed with tobacco and alcohol to be consumed for fun. Small doses get the Gurung drunk, but cyanotoxin is a poison, and too much honey can leave you with delirium, a drop in your heart rate, and full body paralysis for 24 hours. As you can see, sometimes the villagers take their rager too far, and some of them have to be carried to bed due to partial paralysis. But even severe cyanotoxin poisoning is rarely fatal. And once the villagers wake up and get over their hangovers, the rest of the honey is bottled up to be shipped to customers all over the world, like me. In recent years, it's become a trend to test the effects of mad honey on social media, so I just had to get some myself to see what all the hype was about. I ordered it from Himalayan Honey, the company that sources their honey directly from the hunters, and provided me with the insane footage that we've seen today. The first thing you notice is that this stuff is a dark reddy brown, and it smells strong, like it's been fermented. Then it's time for me to take the plunge and see how my body handles the cyanotoxins. I started with a single teaspoon and was hit by how rich it tasted. Kind of like other rare honeys made with specific nectar, like Manuka honey. It caused a slight tingling in my throat, and at this point, the video of Gurung villagers getting carried back home were running through my head. But I can confirm that this teaspoon didn't cause me to hallucinate, and it just made me feel really relaxed. In fact, the next day I decided to up the ante and try 4 teaspoons. And again, I didn't lose my mind, I just felt really calm. It was disappointing, but some batches are weaker than others, with potency varying by how long ago it was harvested or how it was stored. The stuff the Gurung are trying is likely much stronger, as it's fresh from the source. Still, if you want to try the honey yourself, be aware that it is illegal in some countries, like South Korea, Canada, and Australia. And it'll be pretty awkward when the other prisoners ask you what you're in for. Buying honey? The jars aren't cheap because of the effort involved in harvesting and shipping it, and for most Gurung villagers, the honey hunt only subsidizes their income. They typically farm to earn money throughout the rest of the year, but this doesn't matter to the Gurung, who harvested honey long before they had any customers to sell it to. Now I know what you're thinking. If this insane, death-defying practice isn't making the honey hunters rich, then why do they bother risking their lives at all? Well, the hunt is an important part of Gurung culture. It lets the whole village band together to maintain unity in the community, and as we know, lots of traditional Gurung medicines rely on the honey. So without the hunt, they'd have no way to treat a long list of ailments. Finally, the hunt allows the village's young men to prove their strength and bravery, as many of them go on their first hunt at just 15.
It's been 20 years since I started hunting. I started at the age of 15 to 16. My father used to be a hunter too. So I learned hunting from him, following in his footsteps.
Despite this, the tradition is still dying out due to climate change, and the Gurung are having to find other ways to make money. Today, up to 14% of all Nepalese people move abroad to work and send money home, as they can make much more outside the country. The same thing is happening to the Gurung, and many members of the younger generation are refusing to take up the risky practice, in favor of higher-paying jobs that can be found away from their village. A hunter called Mangal Jung Gurung has noted,
"If the younger generation doesn't take interest, honey hunting might one day vanish. That's why the young must stay curious, and the elders must pass down their wisdom."
If nothing changes, these men may become the last honey hunters on Earth. But all hope isn't lost. As mad honey has gained notoriety worldwide, honey hunting has become a popular tourist attraction in the Himalayas. Many people travel to Gurung villages and pay up to $1,500 to join their hunt and try the mad honey during the village's celebrations. This could give the Gurung people a more reliable source of income. So, even if honey supplies continue to dwindle, the hunt may live on. But if you want to try mad honey in the future, you might have to catch a flight to Nepal and get it straight from the source. Which part of the Gurung's honey hunt did you find the craziest? And would you like to try mad honey yourself? Let me know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.